This is episode 103. So let me ask you a question. Have you ever been so caught up reading an email or an article from a brand and you ask yourself, you wonder, why do you have such an emotional connection with that piece of content that you just read? Or, for example, you read an email and without even looking at the from line, you know exactly who that email is from. And the reason behind this is because they have mastered their brand's tone of voice. So in this episode, I will give you some tips on how you can perfect your tone of voice so you can be writing the best SEO copywriting for your emails and for your website and your blog. Welcome to the Calm Marketer Podcast. My name is Kenneth Fong, a digital marketer on a mission to help businesses thrive. I'll bring you on my marketing journey where you'll get to learn from my experiences as an INFP navigating an extroverted world and get actionable marketing tips for your business. Thanks for spending some time with me today. Now let's begin. I've been reading a lot of articles online about SEO copywriting, and I came across articles talking about tone of voice. And I wanted to talk about tone of voice today because when you study SEO copywriting, you don't really think too much about tone of voice, or people don't really mention it too much. But over the years, I've realized that emails that I'm most attracted to, the emails that I open up consistently, or the blogs that I read consistently, it's not the actual copywriting per se, but it's the emotion that comes from those emails and from those blog articles. It's kind of funny that whenever you read a piece of content, if it's good content, you know who that company is, who wrote that piece of content, because you have that emotional connection. You know how that company writes their emails, you know the words that they use, you know the type of personality that comes forth from their content, right? And that builds that connection, it builds that trust. And it just wants you to open all of their emails and read them because you have that emotional connection. And if you want to build that long-lasting customer relationship with your customers, you really need to focus on your tone of voice. And that tone of voice needs to resonate with your audience. Because if it doesn't, then you'll be losing them, and you don't want to lose your customers. I read in a stat that says 65% of consumers say a brand's tone of voice helps them build an emotional connection to the company. 65%. And honestly, I think it would be probably higher, right? Because emotion comes from the words that you read, and emotion builds trust. So if you want to build trust between your company and your audience, tone of voice is something you need to really focus on. And if you write consistently in that same tone of voice, that's where you can really build your brand image, right? Everyone understands that having a brand image is extremely important in the long term, and keeping your brand top of mind with your audience and making sure that your brand is looked at a high level and isn't looked at a low level, right? So writing consistently with that same tone of voice will really build your brand year after year. So when you build your brand and build that connection with your audience, that emotional connection, you'll start to showcase your authenticity, right? If you write the same every single time, that will show that you're authentic. Because if you write articles that have different tone of voice, that use different types of vocabulary, and your audience reads all these different types of content, it doesn't build that authenticity. So you need to write consistently every single time to build that trust with your readers. So there's about four things that you can look at to determine how to write in a consistent tone of voice for that emotional connection, right? So you could be either formal or casual. You could be funny or serious. You could be respectful or irreverent. You could be enthusiastic or matter of fact. So decide, do you want to be formal or casual, funny or serious, respectful or irreverent, enthusiastic or matter of fact? So look at your brand and decide how you want to create your tone of voice. So if you picked, these, you need to set guidelines, and guidelines in terms of your copywriting. So there's 4 types of guidelines that you need to follow. You need to set the right syntax. So syntax is about how you'll develop and structure your sentences. Are they long, short? The next one is grammar. So that's how to use the right form of verbs, adjectives, etc. The next one is vocabulary. So what kind of words you will or won't allow. And the last one is punctuation. So how many exclamation points are too many? Do you use emojis? Do you use a lot of questions, dashes, ellipses, things like that? So whenever you ask your copywriter or hire people to write articles for you, make sure you set these guidelines. So make sure they understand what type of syntax to use, grammar, vocabulary, and punctuation. So in a nutshell, you could create 5 adjectives that describe your content. So you can tell your copywriter to say, I want my content to be friendly, positive, and outgoing, right? So you can say, my content needs to be friendly, positive, and outgoing. So your copywriter knows that your messaging should be, upbeat, welcoming, friendly, right? So you might ask, okay, it's great, right? So you have your own idea of what your tone of voice should be. But at the same time, you need to understand that your customers might think differently. So how do you figure out your tone of voice? Instead of just asking you and your colleagues in a meeting, also branch out. Ask outside of the company. So ask your customers. Ask them on surveys of how they view your brand. How would they, what type of friend would they consider your company? So ask your customers questions about how they perceive your products, your brand, and your company. The next thing that you could do to figure out tone of voice is to look at your competition. So pick your top 3 competitors, subscribe to their email newsletters, look through their page content, look through their blog articles, and try to pull out certain pieces of information that will describe the tone of voice that they are putting out there. And the last thing that you could do to figure out tone of voice is to really understand your audience and how they speak. So you need to understand your persona. Like, who is that persona that you are speaking to? Are they single moms? Are they new entrepreneurs? Are they corporate executives, C-level suite executives? Like, who is reading your content? And how do they speak to their friends, to their colleagues, to their family? And use those types of vocabulary, sentence structure, grammar, punctuation that they would use, and incorporate that into your content. And that way you can connect with your target audience. All right. So really make sure you understand what type of tone of voice you want to choose for that emotional connection. So again, you need to do either formal versus casual, funny versus serious, respectful versus irreverent, enthusiastic or matter of fact. So those are what really build that emotional connection. And you need to set guidelines. So understand what type of syntax to use, what type of grammar, what type of vocabulary, and what type of punctuation that all of the content that you churn out needs to follow. All right, so hopefully this gives you a good guideline on how to start building out your tone of voice. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. Reach out at bit.ly/the calm marketer. That's bit.ly/the calm marketer. And you can shoot me a video message, an audio message, or a text message, and we can collaborate. If you need my help with anything, let me know, and I'd be happy to help you. So with that said, I will speak to you on the next episode.